What's going on, guys? Welcome to Rob's house. I have a very exciting video for today. This has been a long time in the making. Today, we're working on the VIPER. Now, I had mentioned a long time ago, if you've been watching the channel for a while, I mentioned that I had pretty big set of mods planned for this car, and unfortunately we were just hit with tons of delays trying to get these parts, but I will say that it was worth the wait. Today we're installing a full Autoform AFX Aero kit onto the VIPER. Now, I've already gone ahead and installed the hood. I just picked the hood and the wing up from paint last night. The hood looks amazing. As you can see, it's a Gen 4 style hood. The difference between the Gen 3 and Gen 4 hoods, the Gen 4 has 3 heat extractors. The Gen 3 only had 1 heat extractor on each side of the hood. And the hood scoop is a lot more aggressive on this one, which should actually help feed air into the blower. You can actually see the filter for the Paxton Supercharger right there. So that's excellent. Should be a lot more airflow, better heat dissipation for the car, and it just looks awesome. So that's already on the car. I needed help with that, so shout out to Steve, my buddy Steve. He has a truck, so he took me to drop the parts off and to pick them up from paint, and he helped me put the hood on last night, because if you've ever installed a hood before, you know that aligning a hood by yourself is virtually impossible. You basically need 2 people to do it. I'm sure there are ways. I'm sure someone has some thoughts in the comments on how I could do it myself, but it just wasn't worth it. I had the extra set of hands. It only took us about a half an hour to install the hood. It aligned really well. Everything from Autoform bolted up as if it was factory. I mean, I have to say, the fitment is really good on these parts. I want to give a shout out also to Brian. I dropped the parts off a couple weeks ago at his house for paint, and I gave him the paint code, obviously, and it looks perfect. I mean, you can't even tell that that this hood didn't come on the car. I don't know how well it translates on camera, but obviously this is the fender has the factory paint, and then the hood, I mean, the lighting in here is also not very precise, but you can see the hood is freshly painted, and it basically matches perfectly. I know my camera's auto-focusing, so, you know, this isn't a great representation right now, but what we'll do is after we're all done, I'm gonna do a montage out in the sunlight, and you'll actually be able to see that better. Now, today what we need to do is install the rest of the kit. So over here, you see I have a lot of stuff on my workbench. This is actually the brackets to install the wing. The wing is over here in a box. It is an ACR replica style wing, and the guys at Autoform actually did custom risers for me. So typically when you buy a wing for a convertible, they have it be around the same height as what the ACR convertible was. The ACR was made in a convertible for a very limited run, basically, but there are some of them out there. They're pretty rare, but they had a lower wing. Now, on mine, I wanted the coupe style wing. I wanted the high wing on mine. So they made some custom risers for me. They're the coupe risers that will fit on the convertible trunk lid. So the wing will sit high like the coupe ACR, and it'll be just as big. Whether you get the convertible or coupe wing, it is the same wing. It's just different risers. So we have that in the box here. We also have the splitter, which is held on by 4 bolt locations toward the back, and then in the front there are some rods that we have to install, and then we also have a set of canards to really set the front end of the car off. Now, I had ordered these parts actually shortly after I bought the car, but like I said, there's been a ton of delays. I ended up waiting about a year. That's a really long time. I will say, from everyone on the forums, everything I had heard was Autoform are the guys if you have a VIPER. Like, their quality is the best in the business, basically OEM level quality. And having installed this hood last night, I could say that's legit, because it bolted right up. The hood already came with the latch molded into it. The studs for so the hood doesn't actually bolt on, it has studs, and then there's lock nuts that actually hold it on the VIPER. It already had the studs in it. Used the factory hardware, basically just pulled old hood off, put this one on. That only took about 5 minutes. I mean, it was really that simple, but then we had to align it. So it took us about 30 or 45 minutes to get it, you know, lined up properly. As you can see, the body line is basically perfect. So, you know, we spent some time making sure that like the corner lined up and everything. So we were being a little meticulous, but it looks great. And so now I'm gonna throw this up on the quick jacks. We'll get a little time lapse going, and I'm going to throw some of that Aero on. probably start with the front end and then we'll do the wing after, and then I'll give you guys a shot of the finished product. The vision for this was basically growing up, which I've already said when I bought this car, my childhood dream car was a Dodge Viper. Specifically a SRT body style, and really specifically a Gen 4 ACR, the black one with the single red driver stripe. So when I bought this car, which is obviously it's a Gen 3, but same body style, I was like, I'm gonna put the Gen 4 hood on it, I'm gonna put the full ACR replica Aero on it, so it'll basically look like an ACR convertible, and we're gonna do the red driver stripe. We're not gonna be able to do the driver stripe in this video because the paint is still degassing. Like I said, I picked it up last night from paint. It sat for about a week so far, but he told me to give it like another month. You're supposed to give 4 to 6 weeks for paint to fully cure. So I have to let the paint degas. There's a couple of small spots, and the painter did say, Brian told me, you know, as it degasses, you might get a little bit of hazing that will buff right out. So we're gonna, you know, in a month we'll hit it with the polisher and all that stuff, and then we'll add the driver stripe to it, and you'll really see the finished product. But today, we'll at least get the Aero installed, and you can see the car just all blacked out for now without the driver stripe, looking amazing. So, really excited. Let's go ahead and get started. Well, that was interesting. I don't know if you guys could see it super well on the time lapse, but basically what happened was a couple of the holes in the bottom didn't quite line up, so I had to widen some of them, modify it just a little bit, but nothing too bad. It actually fits great. I didn't realize at first when I was mocking it up that you do have to remove this belly pan cover. I don't know what you would call this thing, but it's a plastic piece, right? And the splitter replaces this as well. Now, it's worth noting that the front fascia is actually held on by a series of bolts. So what I actually ended up doing was putting some double-sided tape down on all those tabs, and it's pushed up pretty hard against that now, so I don't think it's gonna move, but I did put some tape there just in case. I still have some tools out here, but here you can see what it looks like. Coming together. So anyway, now I'm going to break for dinner because I'm pretty hungry, and it's already like 7 o'clock because I started this after work today. And then we'll come back and I have to do the Canard still, and I have to mount the uprights for the wing. So I'm gonna do that after dinner. I'll be right back. All right, guys, this is it. This is it. I have the template mocked up to drill the holes for the uprights for the wing. I have measured again and again and again and again. It's worth noting that the center line would be sort of this left side of this tape. The piece of tape is probably not on there straight, but what I did was I sat my tape measure on the top and measured, basically used the brake light as a centering mechanism. So I measured from the center out to each side of where it will line up with the edge of the brake light. And I think that's gonna be as close as I can get. I also measured the distance between both of these holes and the edge of the trunk lid to make sure that it will also be straight, as far as like when you're looking at it this way, that it's gonna sit perfectly straight. I don't really think I can get much closer. At this point, I'm within a 1/16 of an inch. Like, I'm really close. It's cardboard template. It's not gonna be exact, you know, but it's gonna be close. So I think it's just time to send it. Well guys, big sad. I gotta call it quits for tonight. I think one of the brackets is wrong for the wing. So I drilled the holes and everything. You saw me do that on the time lapse. And then I ended the time lapse because I started to have problems. You know, I mocked up the wing. It obviously fits. The risers have studs coming off of them. So I drilled the holes right. I mean, it sits dead even on the back side and everything, just like it should. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but the brackets, I suspect, are the problem. So if you look at these brackets, the first thing you'll notice is that they are the same. Now, this seemed kind of weird to me because they sort of mount like this. Okay, so if this was the passenger side, right? You have the riser comes down, the studs go through these holes, you bolt it on, and then you have these tabs that push on the inner liner of the trunk. And all you do there is, since it sits right up against the trunk liner, is you just drill a hole through and you add a rivet. Easy, right? Well, the driver's side, I think, needs to be a mirror image. So I think actually the tabs need to be on the left-hand side. And the reason I say that is because the way the trunk is shaped, it's not totally flat on the inside. It kind of like, the part that it sits against is kind of curved. Like it curves along the back of the car, right? Because it's the inner liner that follows this rear body line, which curves, right? Back end of the car is not flat. On the passenger side, it works fine because you have the holes that mount in, and then you have some extra space between the bracket and the liner, and it lines up fine with the holes. I could immediately see how that was going to go on. It's way off. Like when you mock this up, right, and this is on the inside, these are, it's like an inch and a half too far like down, right? Because if it mounts like this, so if you have the trunk open, so that the studs were coming straight at you, right? This thing would mount like this, right? and the angle on here is way too steep to be on toward the inside of the trunk. If it was toward the outside of the trunk, it would be fine, but obviously I can't mount it upside down because then it's like wrong, right? So I feel like these brackets are supposed to be different. They're supposed to be a driver's side and a passenger side, because I could not get it to line up at all. And I know I drilled the holes right, like I said. The only way I could get this to sit flat would basically put the holes so high up that the hole would basically be at the edge of the trunk lid, which means this riser, because the actual screw is like somewhere in here, that means the riser would actually hang over the trunk lid. It's not supposed to do that. So I just have no idea what to do at this point. So I emailed Autoform. Hopefully they get back to me tomorrow. Like I said, big sad. I don't know what to do. I just have the wing sitting on the car right now. I already drilled holes into the trunk, so I gotta figure out one way or another. We at least got the splitter on tonight. Splitter sits really low in this car too, so that's kind of concerning. The splitter on the Corvette is about 3.5 inches off the ground, which is pretty low, as is. I mean, it's definitely a low car. The splitter on the VIPER is 2 inches off the ground. And my ride height is pretty similar in the VIPER to the Corvette. Like, if you measure the ground to the side skirt, the VIPER's actually a little higher, I think. If I remember correctly, I think it's about 1/2 inch higher than the Corvette. So that splitter hangs down quite a bit. That's gonna be interesting to see if I can even get it out of the driveway. My driveway is like a little bit steep, so I have to angle it with all my cars. I'm wondering if I'll be able to clear it with the VIPER. We'll find out. But it's not going anywhere until I figure out this wing issue. Anyways, you guys won't have to wait, because we're gonna time travel right now and I'm gonna come back with a solution. All right, guys. I think I got it. So I spoke with Steve at Autoform. Thank you, Steve. They were closed last night, obviously. It was like, 11 o'clock at night by the time it was done. And I came up with a solution. So the problem is that in my car, when I tried to line up the main holes, right, the holes that were already there, ignore this inner one for a second. What was happening was the bracket, when it was sitting like this extra piece was hanging like at an angle that was too low to sit inside of the trunk liner. Talking to Steve, I had an idea. He was talking about migrating the holes, and at first he was saying to move them up and down, but then I realized, wait a minute, if I just shift the bracket like this, all of a sudden now it clears. And then what I did was, because the tab here then would have been sticking up like this, I just took some pliers and just bent it down a little bit so that it now lines up with the curvature of the trunk. Kind of hard to visualize because this probably still looks cockeyed, but it sits pretty flat on the inside of the trunk liner. Now, the way this mounts, I'm holding it with one hand trying to get a visual here, but basically you have the holes there, and then that triangle piece, which you probably can't see, basically it runs along here where my finger is, and that tab sits on the inside of the trunk lid. Now, obviously I made the hole a lot bigger than their instructions said to make it, but I didn't move too far over such that I can't, such that like the tabs wouldn't be on the inside still. So the point of the tabs is we're gonna put a rivet through one of them just to give it a little more structural integrity. But I think this is actually gonna work. The bracket is sitting a little cockeyed, but after talking to Steve, I feel better about it, because he was telling me that the ACRs don't even have a bracket like this. They just have an aluminum plate on the bottom, and that's enough. Like, you're not gonna cave in the trunk or anything. He said he does this to try to prevent you from getting any stress cracks over time. So that's good. I think this is gonna work now. So now I gotta go to the hardware store and get some epoxy. He recommended that I epoxy the bracket on there basically to help seal it up. So first of all, that moisture won't get in, and help seal up and distribute load, because it'll sort of act as a spacer. The bracket doesn't sit, it sits pretty flat, but it's not perfectly contoured to the trunk, right? So by putting the epoxy, you fill in whatever gaps there are, and you get a nice seal between the bracket and the trunk and the hatch. So I'm gonna go and do that, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like. I already test fitted the wing last night too, so I know I drilled the holes right. The wing sits on there perfect. So I'm gonna mock this up, and then I'll be back. Guys, it worked. It worked! The wing is mounted. Check this thing out. Oh yeah. Shout out to Autoform. This thing looks sick. I mean, every angle, it just looks absolutely gnarly. Follows the body line pretty much perfectly. As you see, I got the gaps. It's kind of dark out right now, so you can't really see it, but I got the gaps pretty good on the trunk lid. Everything is tightened up. I got epoxy in there sealing it, rivets on the extra bracket. It's good to go. Now, the bad news is this is really, really low, this splitter, and I can't get out of my driveway. Big sad. Which isn't a huge deal because I already rubbed tire a little bit occasionally, so I was kind of thinking of raising the car a little bit more anyway, so I'll probably raise it about 1/2 inch. I angled it coming out of my driveway, and it was like just barely gonna hit. So we'll come back and do that, but I just wanted to get this test fit on, and everything's coming together. Everything's coming together. So anyway, I'll be back next time. We'll raise the car up, throw the canards on, and see if I can get out of my driveway. All right, guys, another day and some more VIPER modifications. We did a little time traveling. We left off with the wing install, and it was a little bit dark out, but you can see it a lot better in the garage here. This thing is absolutely massive. I did have to raise the ride height of the car, big sad. I did make it out of the driveway last night, but I did scrape, unfortunately. So I did scrape the splitter, which was brand new, but Sharpied it, colored it a little bit on the bottom. Today we're gonna finish up the install. There's one thing left to do, and that is the canards. So you can see we got some Autoform AFX canards here, and basically the way we're gonna install these is they rivet on. Looks pretty straightforward. I'm gonna untape these rivets because they have the inner washers retained here with the tape. You can kind of see one there. Those will slide right off, and then basically I can mock it up with painter's tape. And the way that you're supposed to do this is go along the body lines. So we have one body line here coming down the side of the fender, and then we have another body line here along the bottom. So the big one is going to kind of align with both of those like that. So you have the side of it lining up flat basically, and then the bottom going along this bottom body line. And then for the top one, we're going to do the same thing. I got this backwards. Do the same thing along the fender body line, right? We're gonna line that up, and we're gonna position it so that it sits around the, actually it'll be a little higher, it'll be like this. So it sits around the middle of the fog light assembly, because it comes right up to that fog light assembly. So pretty easy. I mean, there's just 5 holes to drill total. I'm gonna mock it all up with painter's tape to make sure everything's aligned properly, and then once I have it all aligned, we'll drill some holes and see how it looks. Guys, we're all done. I hope you enjoyed that time lapse. I only put the one side because the second side is the same process, but check it out. All done. And the car looks awesome. Came out pretty much exactly how I envisioned it. Shout out to Autoform for doing this one-off custom coupe riser. I'm really happy about that. So now I just have to clean the car up a little bit, polish out a couple of small scratches just from transporting the wing and the hood. But in order to do that, I gotta wait a couple weeks for the paint to finish degassing. So we'll fast forward right now, do a little bit of time travel, and when we come back, we'll hit you with the montage.
I'm on the way, tell him I don't play. Yeah, I'm on the move, trying to get my pay. Yeah, I might just move on and watch and pray. Yeah, I'm on the way, I'm on my way. Yeah. This here, 7 plus on the ropes. They ain't doing this shit, slipping over my flows. Yeah. Yeah, love said I'm a goat. Yeah.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that montage. I'm super happy with how the car came out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Only thing left on my to-do list for this car is to just throw the ceramic coating on it, which just isn't here yet. I'm just waiting for it to come. I ordered some on Amazon, should be here this week. But I did a paint correction last night, added the stripe, and I think it's pretty much good to go. So, like I said, let me know what you think in the comments. As usual, I hope this video is entertaining, and I'll see you guys next time.
Reach for the stars, 'cause we're